great channel. I'm Aishwarya, and in our class today we are going to be learning the whole chapter of rulers and buildings in one shot, right? So we are going to be looking at this whole chapter at one go. So I hope all of you are ready, all of you are excited, and I hope that you have brought your enthusiasm to class as well. So I can see that quite a bit of you are here. I know that school would have just gotten over. So I can see Laksh, Anu, okay, that's Vriddhi. Then I can see Chamkor Singh. Hello, hi Ashish. Hello everyone. Shivaganga is here. Hello Shivaganga. Good evening everybody. Good evening. Yes. So this is our aim for today. Now I know all of you will ask me, ma'am, are we going to have Menti quiz today? So sadly today we do not have any Menti quiz. Today we will only be doing one shots and there will be some homework questions for all of you, right? Yes, how was your day at school? Did you all have a good time in school today? Are we all excited for today's class? Please make sure that you share this video with all of your friends and do not forget to like this video, right? Yes, I am fine. I am amazing. Very happy to be with all of you. Hi Nisha. Hello. Yes, school was good. Okay, good. Ma'am, exams are starting today. I understand. For most of you, exams are starting. But nonetheless, see, if you are somebody who's watching this video maybe after the live stream is done, you can watch this video on 2x and you can learn, right? Yes, I know, only 10 likes, but not a problem, right? All of you who are here, quickly make sure that you like this video and you go ahead and you share it with your friends, right? And do not forget to subscribe to our channel. Yes? Okay. For a lot of you, exams are going on. Some of you exams are starting. Not a problem, bachas. Whenever you need this session, we are always here taking classes. And you know that when it's on YouTube, you can always come back later and watch it as well, right? Hello, Apsara. Hello. Yes, amazing. So everybody quickly let me know if my audio, my video and my screen and what I'm writing on the screen is visible to all of you. Give me a quick thumbs up and we are going to get started, okay? So today's class is going to be very, very simple and easy. In the meanwhile, just give me one moment. Yes, okay, it is perfectly audible and visible. Very good everybody, very good. And I hope all of you have liked and subscribed to our channel because you know that champions are made here, right? So we here at Byju's 6 to 8 believe that you are all our champions and we want to help you just become better and better in life, right? Not just in your exams but in life as well, which is why we have a lot of upskilling to do as well. And all this magic happens at Byju's 6 to 8. So do not forget to subscribe to our channel as well, and as you know we are reaching closer and closer to 50,000 subscribers. Very soon this slide will go away, so of course everybody do not forget to subscribe. Yes ma'am, we should have a target of 100 likes. Yes, of course, why not, right? So if you are someone who's also going to be watching it much later on after the live stream, always remember that we need to hit 100 likes today. So let's quickly everybody share this video with your friends, tell them to subscribe and do not forget to like the video, right? So we are going to get started, okay? We will get started very, very quickly. Yes. Ma'am, okay, probably Nandini, there are some technical issues that normally happen, right? So it's probably because of that, okay? That's why probably the live is not started. So we'll get started today. I'm not going to spend too much time right now. So let's get focused on learning about the chapter, rulers and buildings. Now, all of you tell me, why should we learn about rulers? Okay, in history, of course, it's important to learn about them and what their contribution was, right? But you tell me, why should you learn about buildings, right ma'am? What will I do learning about buildings in 7th standard? What is there for me about buildings, right? So why should I learn? Not rural, it is rulers, right? Rulers and buildings. So what do you understand by buildings and why we should learn about buildings? Can you tell me? Okay, I can see Amritanshu has given me a very good answer. Buildings will tell us about the ruler, okay? They show how they lived. Okay, very good. Buildings will tell us about the rulers. All right. To know about the history of the building. Very good. Yes. So most of you have a good idea of this, what this chapter communicates, right? Yes. So first and foremost, it is important to understand about buildings because it gives us a good idea about the architecture, right? So the architecture, and of course based on how those buildings were made with whatever resources that are there. This also tells us about the rulers who ruled our country or our subcontinent at that time, right? And also gives a good idea about the history, the way they treated their people, yes, to learn more about their wealth, so on and so forth, right? So these are some of the reasons. Now when we talk about buildings or infrastructure, we know that it looks something like this now, no? Most buildings would look like this, right? Yes, most of our buildings look like this. But did man always live in houses like this? Did they always live in big skyscrapers, modern fancy houses with smart technology where you say, okay, I want the lights dim or I want the lights to be brighter, and then it happens automatically? No, right? We never lived like that. So if I really go back in time, that is if I go way back in the earlier days, man used to live in caves, right? Man used to live in caves, and he used to make do of whatever was available to him. So that time there was never a fixed place where he used to be. He used to go from one place to another in search of shelter, right? And how do we know that man lived in these caves? Yes, how many of you know, or how do we know that man actually lived in caves? And he actually did, go for hunting, or this is what he did. How do we know about all of these things? Did somebody say, oh, you know what, I lived in the caves and I did this and this? Somebody came and told us. No, right? We're talking way back thousands of years. Seals are found. Okay, so somewhere some information was there. Yes, very good. Scribbling or paintings. Very good, very good. So you observe that there are some paintings, or there are some, diagram. I will not say diagrams, but there's a lot of art that you see, right? And mainly we call them as cave paintings that we find, right? And from the cave paintings, we learn more about how man was able to, how he was a nomad and how he moved on from one place to another. He used to hunt for food, right? All these things that are there was, told to us, or we interpreted it from the cave buildings. But then later, of course, through manuscripts and inscriptions, everything we learnt about it. But as we moved on, right, we saw that we started to settle down in life. Yes, so we started to settle down, and of course, agriculture was being practiced. But the first form of settlement, or I would say the first form of civilization, can you tell me what that was, the earliest form of civilization that was there? Very quickly in the chat. You've learned this in your 6th standard. The earliest form of civilization, wherein you'd see proper houses, proper, systems that were implemented. Where would you find it? In the chat, quickly. Exactly, more than Indus Valley, I'll say the Harappan civilization that was there, no? Wherein we see that there were well-planned cities. Yes, so the concept of having a plan and a structure to all of this came much later, right? And of course, over such time, right? Yes, very good. All these civilizations, the constructions, give us an idea about how people managed to live, survive, back in those days using the resources, and over time as rulers, monarchs came into the picture, we learn more about it, right? So now we're going to progress a little bit more about understanding about buildings during the medieval period, right? So medieval period is roughly between 14th between the 14th century, like 11th to 15th century-ish, right? So around this time, we see that especially during the medieval period, we see that there were many magnificent structures built, okay? Many beautiful magnificent structures built, and the size and the grandeur, or how grand and magnificent it looked, actually spoke more about the rulers or the kings of that time, no? And they said that many religious structures were also built during the medieval period. So especially we see that palaces, forts, temples, parks, all of them were constructed during this time. Now the real question is, why was it important to build all of these things? What was the purpose behind it? So first and foremost, like how all of you have told me, ma'am, this was a way in which the rulers would tell how rich they were, right? Or how much money that they had. And at that time, you see, rulers wanted to leave an impression like, oh, this is like, I did this and this should stay on forever and ever, right? So they wanted to leave their mark on the minds of their subjects or the people, right? And yes, some of them wanted to celebrate their victory as well. So they would build that, or they would have like big statues, yes? And of course, they would build some public structures, right? Like tanks and wells, so that the people who they ruled over, who were called as their subjects, they would respect them, no? So that is one of the reasons. Now, when we talk about the structures that they built, so now we know why they were building things around everywhere. But what are the structures that they built? So between 8th century to 18th century, two kinds of things were built. So we saw that temples, mosques, tanks, wells, all of them were built, which were considered to be public spaces, right? So they wanted to build public spaces for everybody. But at the same time, forts, temples, tombs, gardens, all of these were built as private spaces, which were considered to be safe, grand places that was meant for the imperial family, or which we call as the monarchy, right? This was for them. Yes, very good. Now, of course, the question is, now they built many structures, or what we call as they built many monuments, right? So they built many monuments. Now again, the question being about why are we studying specifically about architecture and monument? I am bringing back this question. So again, quickly to tell you why we are learning this. This gives us an insight. So you can write these pointers down. It will definitely be helpful, right? So it gives us an insight into the technologies. Okay, so I'm being more specific, that were used for construction. So back in those days, of course, now the way we construct is not the way we used to construct earlier. So this also tells us how they were able to do it, right? And of course, we have learned from our ancestors. They did something, then we realize that, oh, you know what, this did not happen, right? And then we, of course, go ahead. Yes, and of course, this also gives us an insight into more about the history of the monument. What is the reason behind building it, right? Yes, very good, Satya Prakash. We're going to talk about more of that as well, with some extra information also on types of architecture, right? And of course, when you think of it, right, we also see that mainly, most often than not, constructions were done by stones, right? So we see that they used to build through stones, but later what used to happen is they started making it bigger and better. Yes, very good, Laksh, very good. It also tells us about the victory as well. So now, are we clear? Are we clear with what are the different kinds of buildings that were there and why it is important to learn? Are we clear with this part? No, you're not late. I'm just giving an introduction. So the point of studying, see, with history, again, I understand it gets sometimes very boring, or sometimes you'll be like, ma'am, so much to remember. But if you remember it as a story, right, it becomes very simple and easy. Yes? Okay, now those of you who have doubts, I do understand that you might have some technical doubts which we will be covering later on. So once I finish types of architecture, shall I take all of your doubts, because this chapter is very big, okay? And there's quite a bit of things for me to cover. So what I will do is, after I finish types of architecture, I will take a doubt and then we will move ahead, alright? So we also have a limitation of time, because by 5 p.m. we should end our class, okay? So everybody, are you with me for this? I'll quickly start finishing all these parts and then I will take your doubts, okay? Give me a quick thumbs up, everyone. Yes, very good. Yes, exactly. Yes, Satya Prakash, we are going to deal more about it, right? So we'll talk more about it later on. So now, of course, when we talk about monuments, or when we talk about superstructures, right, big, magnificent structures that were built, we know that temple construction started much early in the early 11th century, okay? And we see that there were various kinds of temples that were being built, right? So if you take the example of the Kandariya Mahadev temple, right, we know that this temple that is there was built way back, way back in those days, around in the 11th century, right? And this temple was built in the shape of a steep mountain, and we see that this particular temple has many mini shikaras, right? So what is a shikara? We know that shikara is a structure like this, right? What we see on top, these are all shikaras, and there are 84 mini shikaras. And the name of the deity literally meant the great god of cave, and this was built by the Chandel king in way back in 1999 CC, right? Yes. Now when we talk about it, we see that this main deity, right, or the god deity that is there, was placed in something known as a Garbhagriha. Alright, and the Garbhagriha is also known as Sanctum Sanctorium. Alright, and we see that it was something which is present in the center. Okay, and we see that this was something that was accessible only to the family and the priest. Right, and we saw that there was a gateway that leads to the main hall, which is called as the Mahamandapa. And here we see that there were various dance performances that were there. Similarly, if you look at the Sun Temple in Konark, right, we all know about the Sun Temple, right? Now, when we talk about the Sun Temple, we know that this was built by the Eastern Ganga dynasty by the Narsingha Devas II. Right, and here we also know that it is almost like 30 meters tall, and it looks like a chariot is pulling it, right? So it looks like a chariot which is being pulled by horses, right? So if you have all visited the Sun Temple, or if you have seen pictures, you would see that the entry would look something like this, wherein we see that there are 7 horses. It looks like that there are 7 horses which are carved out with 12 pairs of wheels. Now, do you know why there are 12 pairs of wheels? Any of you know the reason behind this? Why they are known, or why there are 12 pairs of wheels which were constructed? There was a significance behind it. Any of you know this? Any of you are aware why they made 12 pairs of wheels? If you don't know, you tell me. I'll tell you the answer to it anyway. Yes, bulbous, I will tell you. Nisha, I will tell you what it means, okay? No, ma'am. Okay, no problem. So actually, if you see, no, the 12 wheels, or why they had it, was to represent the 12 months of the year, right? So we have 12 months in a year, no? So 12 months of a year of the year would be represented through these 12 wheels. And even each wheel could be used as a sundial also, alright? So this is one fun fact you can learn from today's class, right? And on the other hand, if you see, both the temples, the Sun Temple that we saw and the Kandariya Mahadev Temple, we saw that they have a certain kind of structure, okay? And this style of architecture was what was called as Nagara style, okay? Now this Nagara style that is there, you don't need to know much about it. It's just some extra information I'm telling you about. But in these kind of temples, right, we see that there is a shikara, the pointy thing that I told you about, right? And what is a shikara? It is nothing but the tallest spire, or this structure that you see, right? The tallest one that you observe is what we call as a shikara, and it is always above the Garbhagriha. What is a Garbhagriha? Nothing but the place where you keep the deity or the god slash goddess, right? And we also know that there is a place which provides for a passage for circumambulation. Very fancy word. But normally what happens is when we visit a temple, we normally take, like in Tamil we say pradakshina, right? We go around it. Yes, we do this, no? So we take a round around the deity. This is what we call as circumambulation, which is provided to, take that for a pradakshina that is there. And we also see that there will be one mandapa wherein we know that devotees can sit or dance can happen. So these are some things that we observe in this kind of construction. But later, if you look at places like Tanjavur, if you come a little down south, we see that the temples look a little different, right? So in this case, if you see, we know that the Raja Rajeshwara temple that was there, we know that this particular temple was built by King Raja Raja Deva, right, in worship of the god that is there. And the king took the god's name because he wanted to appear like the god. So the reason why he named himself after the god is because he wanted to be like God for the people, right? And wanted legitimacy to rule. Yes? So in this particular temple, we see that there's the tallest shikara that is there, and they're amongst the temples that were built around that time. And if you see, right, to build this, They transported about 90 tons of stones for this building, and they built an inclined path. Okay, so they made like a slope kind of thing where they transported 90 tons worth of stone to build the temple, which is why the village wherein it is built, the village nearby, is called as Charupalam, which means village of the inclined, right? So this is a fun fact that you will learn about. Now, this kind of construction that we see in the Rajarajeshwara temple in Tanjavur is called as the Dravidian style, wherein we see that there are these huge structures called as Gopurams, and we know that normally the temple will have a wall surrounding it, and the Shikara is normally rectangular in shape, right? And it has a type of rectangular branched pyramid that is there. What does incline mean? Incline means slope, right? It means a slope. Okay, and we see that there are pillared walls inside them. Now this Dravidian style and this Nagara style that we learnt about comes under the Trabeate style. So what is a Trabeate style? So Trabeate style was something that gained a lot of popularity between 7th to 10th meters, right? So, 7th to 10th centuries, right? So in this particular one, we see that doors and windows that were there, no? They were constructed on a horizontal beam, okay? So we see that doors and windows were constructed on a horizontal beam. And we see that they use these horizontal beams across vertical column. So this right here is something that you need to know. All right, and we also see that this style was also called as the corbelled style of architecture. Yes, so this is something that is very, very important to know. So we also see that the corbelled arch that we see in Delhi is something that is very important, comes under the Trabeate style, okay? And along with this, if you see, it is not just temples but certain mosques, we saw tombs, they all adopted to this kind of this kind of a thing that we see, right? Okay, now along with this, what we also observe is that they had these large structures, right? So we also saw that there are these large structures or large stepped walls, which we call as the baulis, right? So what are these? They are stepped walls that are there, stepped wells, sorry. Okay, so are we clear everybody with this? Okay, are we clear everyone? Are we clear? Very quickly, because I think the chat has is stuck on my screen. I am not able to see. So let me quickly have a look. Okay, yes, now it is fine. Ma'am, who is known? I think it's Shah Jahan, right? Because we learn more about how Shah Jahan implemented a different kind of design into architecture. Vesara style we'll not be learning today with it, and we'll mostly be looking at accurate later on as well, right? So we'll be looking more into that. Yes, okay. Ma'am, so wells were built during that time are present only in villages. So wells and tanks that were there were built across cities and villages for accessibility to people, okay? Not just that it's one way. Exactly, very good, right? Bauris, yeah, stepped wells are called as Bauris, and this is an example. Very good, yes. So are we clear? Are we clear with this? Shall I move on to the next one? But before that, a quick question. Which of the following, so 4 parts of the image is marked, which of the following is a shikara of the temple? Is it A, B, C or D? Which part is the shikara of the temple? Yes, very good everybody, very good. Okay, the chat is stuck once again. Just one moment, let me take it on my phone so that I'll be able to see better. Okay, now I can see. Amazing, amazing. Yes, the correct answer is option C. What is a shikara? It is a spire that is there. No, the tall part of it that we observe here, that is what we call as a shikara. And this is a temple that we find in North India or South India. Very quickly. We learned about 3 temples, no? Which temple is this? Can you tell me? We just had a look at this. Yes, everyone, quickly in the chat. Which temple is it? Yes, the temple that we just learnt about in Tanjavur, right? So the correct answer is yes. Very good, everybody. Very, very good. The Rajarajeshwara temple that had Dravidian style that comes in the Trabeate style, right? Very good. Now we will move on to understanding more about what happened to these temples, okay, before I get into the next style of architecture. Because when we talk about temples, we know that especially during medieval times, there were many temples which were built, right? And we also know that a lot of money was invested into building these temples. But for some reason, we know that the temples were destroyed. Because since temples were a symbol of power and wealth, they also became a target when somebody attacks another kingdom, right? So if I am a king, okay, I am coming from maybe some other country or from maybe some other place altogether, and I know that in this Indian subcontinent, I am seeing so many temples with so much money. So the first thing I will attack are these temples, right? And we know that especially in the 9th century, when the Pandyan king, the Shimara Sri Vallabha invaded Sinhala's kingdom, he first targeted temples and monasteries. And the most popular one, exactly, we know that Mahmud of Ghazni, right? When Mahmud of Ghazni, he made a very similar attempt and he destroyed the Somnath temple. And we know that he tried to glorify himself as a hero, but nonetheless, we know that he especially his power of political and military power was demonstrated, but nonetheless he destroyed a lot of the temples and he looted it as well, right? Yes, exactly, he plundered and destroyed that temple, and all we see now is the ruins that are there. No, once a very proud place that were there, that was something that we see. Now here's a quick question. How many of you have visited Qutub Minar? Can you tell me? How many of you have visited Qutub Minar? Plundered means to destroy entirely, right? To break it down and to plunder it. That is what we mean by it simply. You have visited. I have not visited Qutub Minar, to be honest. I would want to visit soon. One day when I come to Delhi, I would want to really see Qutub Minar and so many of the beautiful architecture. Especially when we look at Delhi, right? Because we know that Delhi has been the capital, or it has been the center of attention during the Mughal period. And of course, for a large period of time, we also know that there's a lot of beautiful architecture in and around Delhi. Right? And if you look at it in Qutub Minar especially, we see that there are many arches and there's a lot of designs on it, okay? And we see that this is something we observe in the balcony. Now this kind of architecture that we normally observe, right? Especially arches, geometrical designs, and even inscription. This suggests that this is not done by any unskilled man, right? But rather we know that this was done by skilled craftsmen. As a matter of fact, a lot of people who worked as architects and who worked in constructing some of the most popular monuments that we see in Delhi and in Agra, we see that even now their their craft is passed on from generation after generation, and the artisans and everybody are still present today doing what they do the best. Yes. So now in this kind of architecture that you see is called as arcuate architecture style, right? I said accurate earlier, so sorry about that, but it's called as arcuate architecture. Okay. Now in arcuate, we see that the weight of the superstructure is carried by the arch. Okay. So we see that there is a prominent arch-like structure that is there which holds the weight. And this arch is called as a true arch, right? And we know that this is a kind of stylistic development that we observe especially during the Mughal Empire time. So here as you see, this is a true arch of Alai Darwaza that we observe in a certain mosque that is there. No? Now we also see that the weight of the superstructure could be above the doors and the windows is, borne by these arches, which is why we call this as arcuate architecture. Now around this time, a lot of limestone was used increasingly in construction, okay? Lot of limestones are used with stone chips that led to faster construction. So this is also a second point that you need to write about, which is very, very important, right? And we also see that using this process made construction easier and faster. So switching from stones to using limestone mixed with stone chips helped in making things faster, right? So this is something to understand. Now we've seen about the two kinds of architectural styles, and we know that various temples implemented the trabeate style, various mosques were built using the arcuate style, and we also saw that various tanks were built, right? But what is the reason behind building all these temples, mosques and tanks? Now constructing all of this also showed their proximity towards God, right? So they wanted to show and expose their wealth, but nonetheless they also wanted to show that, you know what, we are very religious, we are going to go out of your way, and they wanted to portray a God-like image to their subjects. And they also wanted to extend their patronage or their respect to people who are, involved in religious practices and wanted to transform their cities, right? So this right here was very important. And along with this, the tanks and reservoirs were mainly built so that water could be made available to the people, and people like Sultan Iltutmish, he made a large reservoir called the Hauz-e-Sultani, which meant the king's reservoir, and he built all of this so that they reduce. So basically at that point they were dependent on rains and everything, but by building these reservoirs they were trying to get closer and closer to their subjects, right? So water, as you know, is something which is precious and something that they often respected. That is why they used to build this. And tanks and reservoirs were again made for the use of ordinary people. Alright, so with this, if you see, we have understood about temples, mosques and tanks. So are we clear with this so far? Are we clear? Yes? That is amazing, Laksh. That is amazing. And if you have your exam tomorrow, all the best, Vaishnavi, for your exam. So this chapter, to be honest, is very simple. It's not very tough, okay? Whatever pointers I'm telling you. Now, so far, with whatever we have learnt about, the possible questions that will come in your exam, I will tell you that also. What will they ask you about? First and foremost, they will ask you about why, rulers built huge structures, right? Or huge structures, or why they built huge buildings. So this is one potential question they could ask. Second question they could ask is why build temples, right? Or why build temples during the medieval age? Then they could also ask you about what were the two kinds of buildings that they built. So we know that there were some buildings for public spaces, some for private, right? Then they will also ask you about the differences between trabeate and arcuate style. So they can ask you one difference between these two also. Then what else can I ask? What else can they ask you in your exam? They can also ask you what led to the destruction of temples, or why they built tanks and reservoirs for the people. So these are some of the potential questions that they can ask you. So you can make a note of this, or you can star mark it in your book so that you will be able to prepare in a way that you will be able to learn, right? Yes, Kashish, I know today you will be expecting Menti, but sadly today no Menti, we are only doing one shot, okay? So we are clear so far, no? Now we will move on to the next part. Very easy part, but very important also. And to be honest, very, very interesting. So when I learned this for the first time, I found this to be very interesting, because a lot of things that we see in and around us now is I would say inspired from all of this, okay? So now we're going to move a little more into Mughal architecture. Now see, Mughal architecture and influences of the Mughal Empire that is there is strongly felt in our country, okay? So when we talk about gardens, tombs and fort, we see that Mughal architecture made things a little more complex, right? And a little more sophisticated. And we see that the structures they built during the Mughal time, unlike during medieval time. Medieval time, we saw that there were private spaces and public spaces. But Mughal Empire and architecture during Mughal Empire, most structures were used as private spaces. And Babur, in his autobiography, described his interest. So he was an enthusiast, and he laid out his interest in planning and laying out formal gardens called as the Chahar Bagh, right? So Chahar Bagh is something that he had expressed his interest, which of course was later constructed. So what are the elements of a Chahar Bagh? This is something which is very important, which they can ask you for at least 3 to 4 marks. Okay, this is a very short question that will come. So a Chahar Bagh that is there is nothing but a one which has 4 gardens. Okay, so basically if you see, they are nothing but 4 gardens which were basically put within rectangular walled enclosures. Okay, so we see that they are 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I don't think you will be able to see that. I'll just do it on top, right? So we see that there are 4 gardens, 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is put in an enclosure. That is what we mean by it. Now we see that these are divided, or these enclosures were then divided into 4 quarters made by artificial channels, right? So if there are 4 enclosures, they were divided by some artificial boundaries that are there. So these are not natural, these boundaries are created or constructed. And we see that this is a symmetrically, so it will be divided symmetrically in a way, and we see that some of it is already observed, and they were constructed by Jahangir and Shah Jahan in Agra, Delhi and Kashmir, right? So this is something that we normally observe. Now, these were architectural things that we just not didn't start in Jahangir's time, but way back in Akbar's time also, right? And we saw that there would be a central towering dome as well, which we will learn about here. So we see that during Akbar's reign, a lot of architectural innovations took place, and we know that there would be a tall gateway, right? So we normally observe, no, there'll be a tall gateway which is known as the Pishtaq, right? And there would be a central towering dome. Observe this, there is a central towering dome which were added as features. So what were the exact features or new features that we observe? We see that there is a tall gateway. Just take examples and pictures. When you enter, you will see a tall gateway. You will also observe there's a gateway, and you also observe that centrally there is a huge towering dome, right? A dome that is there. What is a Pishtaq? The Pishtaq is this gateway that you see, right? Pishtaq is nothing but the tall gateway that you observe. That is what it is with it. And these are things that you observe in Humayun's tomb, right? So what you see right behind me is Humayun's tomb, and we see that this kind of tomb architecture was the first that we observed, right? Now, why are these relevant to study? Because it goes back, way back in history, to talk about how they brought in architectural complexity, right? And a lot of constructions that happen over time, even now in the recent days, it's inspired by all of this. Yes? Now, of course, as we go ahead, right, and we go ahead later on to Jahangir and Shah Jahan. Shah Jahan was considered to be the engineer king, right? Especially during Shah Jahan's reign, we saw that we witnessed a fusion of different elements of Mughal architecture. Okay, what is a tomb? A tomb is a place where you lay a person to rest after death, right? So a tomb is placed. So for example, once Humayun passed away, they laid Humayun's body to rest, and they built a structure around it, calling it as a tomb to pay respects to him. That is what is a tomb, right? Exactly, very good. He also built the highest gateway in the world. Very good, Apsara, very good. Yes. Okay. So as we know, he built a lot of different elements also, right? Now he built something known as the Diwani Khaso Am, which were nothing but ceremonial halls of the public, right? So he built one for public, and he also built one for private audience, and he planned the construction of it. Yes. Now there was a throne made of Petria Dura that inlays or that depicts the Greek god Orpheus, right? So see, when he's building a throne or when he's building structures, there are inspirations which are taken, right? And we also see that the courts that he built, right? The courts that he built, he called it as Chihil Sutun, or the 40-pillared hall. So the court that he would have, where people would assemble, they would have 40 pillars, right? Very, very big. Now we also see that the connection between royal justice and imperial court was, was emphasized by Shah Jahan, and he constructed a court in the Red Fort at Delhi. Now we also saw that, of course, we've already discussed about this, and we also know that the reason why he did this, he believed that Orpheus's music could calm the, ferocious beast until they coexisted. Yes, I will tell you what is Patria Dura, don't worry. Okay, now we also know that mainly the reason of why Shah Jahan had an inspired construction was simply because the king's justice was treated to be higher and low as equals, right? So he wanted to have a place, or the reason why he constructed things the way he did was to bring equality, right? So that was the main reason why he did this. Okay, so are we clear? Are we clear with this, everybody? The chat has gotten stuck again. Guys, just give me 2 minutes. Okay, hello. Yes, all right. Ma'am, what is a tomb? Tomb I've already discussed, Nancy. It is a structure, like a stone-based structure which is there that helps, right? That is, that is made for paying homage or to pay tribute to a certain person, which is why we call it as Humayun's tomb, right? Patria Dura is like a marble-ish like structure. Okay, that is what we mean by it. It's like a marble-like structure that is there, which is made up of certain minerals and certain structures, right? That is what we call as Petra Dura. Okay, so are we clear with this? Prapti, I hope now we are clear. See, these are very simple things, right? Now in this also, again, before I go ahead, because next we'll be talking about the very famous Taj Mahal, right? So now when we talk about this also, what are the things you need to know? You need to know about the features of the Chahar Bagh, right? We learned about the features that are there. So we learned about the features of Chahar Bagh. Then after this, we also need to write about, how what were the features that you would observe in Humayun's tomb, right? So you will also need to write about this and how Akbar's architectural reign, or how he started to revolutionize the architectural reign, right? So these are few things that you need to know, and you also need to know about what were the contributions of Shah Jahan during the Mughal period. So these are pointers that you need to remember from this particular part. Now we will move on to a very, very important thing, that is of course the Taj Mahal. How many of you have visited Taj Mahal? Can you tell me? How many of you have visited the Taj Mahal? Again, I have not visited. I want to go soon, right? Ma'am, no, not me. How many of you want to go visit Taj Mahal? Those of you who have visited, how is it? How is it seeing Taj Mahal in real life? This was built in 1600, sometime around 1658. It was fully completed. So I would say from then to now 400 years odd, almost. Yes, मुझे नहीं देखना. Oh, okay. I want to go. Those of you who want to go, I'll also come with you, right? It's very, very beautiful, right? To look at it in real life. Yes, Vidit is like, ma'am, yes, it's very wonderful to look at it in real life. It's a beautiful, magnificent structure. And I know of late, over time, due to acid rain and pollution, it has turned pale yellow. You can see hint of yellow in it as well. Now, can any of you tell me why was the Taj Mahal built? Everybody knows about this. Why was the Taj Mahal built? Why did Shah Jahan build it? You only tell me. Everybody knows the answer to this. We've all been learning about it, no? Yes, of course. Let's do that, Apsara. In memory of Mumtaz. Yes, he built it in memory of his loving wife, Mumtaz Mahal, right? So when she passed away, in her memory, he wanted to build this, right? And he built it. So now if you see this building of Taj Mahal, right? We see that it was built on the Chahar Bagh variant style. That means you have four gardens which are divided, and then it is of course having enclosures. And we know that this kind had a difference. There was a riverfront garden, right? So we see that there is a riverfront garden, and here the monument was not built on the center of the Chahar Bagh, but rather it was placed on the edge near a river bank, right? So here this Taj Mahal is actually a variant of it. Now we also see that this right here was very, very important, and this was a white marble mausoleum, a huge superstructure that was there. And we know that, of course, there's a river that flows next to it. Which river flows next to it? You all tell me. Which river? Yes, very good. It's built on the bank of Yamuna Nadi, right? So it's there by the bank of Yamuna Nadi. Now the layout of it, right? So if you look at it, lot of historians, lot of architects are inspired by the Taj Mahal, right? And of course, we know that over time a lot of buildings were built in and around it. And the city of Shah Jahanabad in Delhi was developed by Shah Jahan to have control the nobles who had access to the river Yamuna. And we know that the imperial palace was built commanding the riverfront, ensuring that very few people have access to it, right? And we know that other houses were built in and around, or houses were built away from the river. So that's why these are some important things to remember when we talk about Shah Jahanabad. So here's a quick question, everybody. What was the Chahar Bagh based on? Gardens of Paradise, Nectars of God, Oasis of Arabia, or Sanctum of Mecca? Can you all tell me what was this based on? Yes, very good. It took a total of 22 years to complete it, right? So they started around in the 1630s, around that time, roughly finished around 1658, around that time. Yes. Very good, everybody. Very good. The correct answer here is option A, Gardens of Paradise. So Chahar Bagh was based on the Gardens of Paradise. So now we will wind up this chapter with a very simple thing, right? So when you talk about a lot of architecture, a lot of buildings that are built, they are normally influenced. So if you look at the Govinda Deva temple that we find in Vrindavan, it's actually influenced by some of the architecture in Fatehpur Sikri. Similarly, if you look at the architecture that we observe in Sarkhej Rosa, it's inspired by the Fatehpur Sikri architecture. And if you go to the Juma Masjid in Bijapur, it is again inspired by the elephant stables of Vijayanagar. So why are we having all of this? What is the reason for all of these architectural influences? So the creation of large empires also brought about the mixing or the fusion of different architectural styles. And the buildings over time that you see have been influenced, right? Ma'am, what do we mean by influenced? Influenced means to be inspired by. So if you tell that, for example, let's say that I am influenced by the way Ankita ma'am talks. That means I'm inspired by the way Ankita ma'am talks, and I want to talk a little like her, but I also want to incorporate my own way of talking, right? So that is what it means to be influenced by. And these monuments also represent how over time history has influenced what we see. For example, if you look at the Bangla Dome, right, the Jor Bangla temple with the Bangla Dome, this was something where the local rulers of Bengal developed the roof design that had a thatched hut, and this was called as the Bangla Dome. And this was inspired by, or this inspired Akbar and everybody else to have those huge domes, right? What is a dome? Dome is a structure that you see like this. Normally this huge structure, dome shape. This is what we mean by dome-like structure. Yes? So this is something that you need to know. Why are we learning? What is the reason? It's because at the end of the day, this would have, impact on it, right? So with this, of course, we come to the end of today's classes, right? So today's class was very simple. Here's a quick mind map, everybody. Take a screenshot and let me know in the chat. Yes, very good, everybody, very good. So this right here gives you a simple mind map that is there of the chapter. And as you know, the important things you need to know are importance of temple, mosques, and tanks that are there. Learn about the architectural styles, and of course gardens, tombs, and fort. And before I go ahead, everybody, here's a quick homework question on what is the difference between Trabeate principle of architecture versus the arcuate type. So this is a homework question. I need you to give me the answer in the chat box, and of course, I will be checking it out. And as you know, everybody, I hope all of you have registered for the webinar that's happening on 21st. It's a parent club where we are going to be talking about goal setting and resolution for kids. So do not miss this webinar out. It is very, very important. And as you know, here's a reminder for Byju's spoken English classes. If you are someone who struggles with spoken English and you feel like I need to improve my English, but I'm a little shy, and maybe I feel like someone is going to make fun of me, or I need to learn it at my own place, then right, that Byju's spoken English classes is the way for you, where we have Cambridge certified teachers helping you out for 2 months at your own place and time, so that you will be able to ace your English, right? And we know that this is going to be a paid program, so definitely you can check it out if you feel like you are someone who wants to improve it. And you know that no matter what, Byju 6 to 8 has got you covered. Unit Test League is going on, so do not forget to subscribe, and please show me your love by liking this video, sharing this video with your friends, and staying subscribed. Yes, Manya, you're a little bit late because I'm finally done with the class, so you can watch it again, and if you have any doubts, let me know in the comment section below. Yes? Alright, everybody, I will see you all very soon. Up until then, bye everyone. Have a nice day.